Good afternoon. Welcome. It's 5:30 p.m. and I'm calling the April 4th, 2023 meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board to order. May we please have the roll call?
Yes, Chair Huff,
Present.
Vice Chair Nelson,
Present.
Member Miller, Member Hanson,
Present.
Member Rosenau.
Here.
We have 4 members present. We do have a quorum.
So regarding the agenda, does the board have any revisions to the agenda? Okay, no revisions. So may I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
perhaps before we get to the motion, before we do the motion, Madam Chair, if we can do just for the record, the report on the posting of the agenda.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to read? Should we read that?
Yeah,
I can-
Sarah can read that into the record.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
I can read that into the record. The agenda for this meeting was posted for public review at the City Hall Bulletin Board and on the west side of the City Council chambers and the Planning Department counter in accordance with the city policies.
Very good. Thank you. So I have a motion from Member Rosenau. And is there a second to the motion? Okay, we have it. So we have a motion by Rosenau, second by Vice Chair Nelson. This is to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion about the agenda? Okay, so seeing none, we'll call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any opposed? So we have the motion passes 4 and with 1 absentee. So 4 to 0 we have. So next is the public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values your comments, pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. So there will be 3 minutes assigned for each speaker. Testimony for the public hearing will be taken a little later today at the time of the hearing. So staff, has anyone requested to comment on a non-public hearing item today that you know of?
No, we haven't received any requests for public comment not pertaining to the listed item.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no speakers, we'll proceed to the consent agenda. And this includes the approval of the minutes from the March 7th, 2023 Historic Site Preservation Board meeting. So has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any revisions to the minutes of March 7th? Any revisions? Okay, so may I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 7? Motion, please.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, so
And I'll second.
very good. I have a motion by Vice Chair Nelson and a second by Member Hanson to approve the March 7th minutes as read. So we have a motion second. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Okay, so now we'll
Madam
go.
Chair,
Yes.
I may just add that for the record that Member Miller has joined the meeting at this point in time.
Oh, okay.
So he may be able to participate in this vote.
Okay, good. So welcome, Member Miller. So we have a motion.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
We have-
I'm trying to get my video going. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Take your time. So we have,
go.
there you go. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to approve the March 7th minutes. Was there any discussion? Member Miller, did you have any corrections or anything about discussion about the minutes, or do you want to?
I did just note that on the consent calendar on March 7th, it referred to the March minutes, and I think it should have referred to the February minutes. I don't know if anyone else mentioned that.
Oh, no, we missed that.
Under item 1A, it
Mhm.
was referring to the March minutes, and it should have been referring to the February minutes.
Very, very good. Very good catch. So, Vice Chair Nelson, can we add that to your motion, amend your motion to include that
Sure.
correction?
So
And-
we'll amend the motion to include Member Miller's observation and input.
Okay, good. And the second still good with Member Hanson? Okay. So any more discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of passing the motion for the minutes, raise aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes 5-0. Let us proceed to agenda item 2A, public hearings. So the public hearing is an application for the city of Palm Springs requesting historic designation of the Tahquitz Resort Golf Course Clubhouse located at 1885 Lawrence Crosley Road. May we please have a staff report?
Yes, give me just a moment as I pull up the presentation.
Okay.
So I'm ready to go whenever I start getting the flood applications. So as long as code components can.
Is it showing full view on your side?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, everyone. For the record, Sarah Yoon, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Palm Springs. The application before our board, the board today, is for historic designation of the clubhouse resource at the Tahquitz Resort Golf Course. The request for HSPB this afternoon is to review the provided recommendations for the application, requesting Class 1 historic designation of the Tahquitz Golf Course Clubhouse, building which is located in the far northwest or northeast corner of the parcel shown here. Outlined in blue is the entire parcel, and in the red, we have kind of a blow up version of where the actual golf course clubhouse sits. To quickly clarify, the request for designation is limited to the clubhouse structure on this parcel. The site does sit on open land zone district, and it's also considered open space park and recreation according to the general plan. So the report that was in your packet, which was written by Chattel, provided a robust history and context for this resource. It was also filled with a lot of historic photographs, which I'm sure everyone enjoyed looking through in the exhibits. The photos shown on the screen here were incorporated in that report and sourced from the Hugh M. Kapner collection at the Palm Springs Art Museum. This primary front elevation captures many of the character defining features of the resource in its unaltered form against the backdrop of the mountains. They're amazing photographs. I had to put them into the PowerPoint. These are photos of the current condition of the clubhouse today. As you can see, there have been some alterations that have been made to the resource over time. However, that strong sense of form and composition remain and highlight the structure. Additions have been constructed in all locations that do not compete with the original form. And alterations have been made, but we do see that they are reversible alterations. As you all know, for Class 1 designation, the resource must demonstrate exceptional historic significance. Out of the 7 criterion here, 1 of them have to be met. And as outlined in this slide and in the staff report, the resource is an important reflection of its time period, embodies the unique method of construction to achieve that spatial experience in the outdoor breezeway. And it is a work of a master architect that continues to influence the field with his work. So in essence, we have criterion 3, 4, and 5, which are met with this building. In regards to the integrity findings, staff finds that the resource today meets all 7 aspects. The resource is still in its original location and surrounded by the setting that is consistent with when it was originally designed. The exterior building material palette of that roughly textured stucco and rock veneer is in good condition. And the unique space of the building required a higher level of workmanship to construct at that time. The design intent of the building and its sweeping roof lines that were described in the report and the massing and its prominence on the site all remain. And the design's association with the mid-century, modern, and late modern styles of architecture are still strong. That feeling remains on the site unaltered for the most part because of those simple shapes and forms have been maintained and are consistent on the site. The Historic Resources Report and the staff report go into detail and list the character defining features of the resource. Many aspects of the original design are highlighted on the structure, which include the curved roof lines, the arched breezeway, the use of glue lamp beams to create that exterior covered breezeway, the inset foundation, the deeply set windows on the front elevation. And these are just to name a few, but you can see the full list here and in the actual report. Many of these features still play a role as you walk through the site and are very clearly visible today. The Tockwitz Golf Course Clubhouse is a city-owned resource with an exceptional level of historic significance. Again, it meets 3 of the 7 criterion, 3, 4, and 5 are met that are outlined in the ordinance. And when evaluating the level of integrity, this resource qualifies for a Class 1 landmark site. Staff recommends the HSPB adopt Resolution 149, recommending City Council designate the clubhouse structure as a Class 1 site. It's kind of short and sweet, but if anyone has any questions related to the staff report, I'm happy to address those. And I did want to make a quick mention. I saw in the list of attendees, it does appear that the architect for this building, Hugh Kapner, is joining us today. Thank you for joining us. It is a very important and significant historic structure that is in the ownership of the city, and we do recommend its designation. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Okay, so at this time, it's our time for the board to ask questions of the staff before we move forward with opening the public hearing. So do board members have questions for staff? Anyone? I have a kind of a question. I read through everything, of course, and wonderful report, very detailed. What kind of landscaping would be considered part of the designation? Any, not the golf course itself, because are we talking about the golf? What does that include regarding the golf course?
That's a great clarification. The designation will be strictly on the building itself. It does not incorporate the fairways or the golf course. It's limited to the building. So the Hugh Kapner designed structure, the resource.
And not any of the landscaping, even around the building.
Those have not been identified as contributing or historically significant. So yes,
yeah,
it would not include.
Well, that's what I thought. Just want to be certain about that point.
Absolutely.
Yes. So Any other questions? Vice Chair Nelson?
Yeah, so just one more comment further to that. Just to clarify, I know Jeff said it's just the building, but does it not include the parking lot or any of the landscape directly in front of the building?
It does not. Those have not been identified as contributing factors for this particular designation.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And Madam Chair, if I could just highlight that we actually have the architect Hugh Kaptur here in the audience. I just wanted to make sure that the board and members of the public were aware of that. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Captor. Good to have you. Are we finished with questions from the board, and should we move on to open the public hearing? Any other questions? Okay, so seeing no other questions from of the staff at this time, I will open the public hearing. And we have some people in the audience that we would like to invite to speak, as you would. And so whoever wants to speak first in the public comment on this item, if you just give your name and your address, and you have about 3 minutes. Now, Mr. Captor, do you want to speak first?
All right.
Okay, well, welcome.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this meeting. And I'd like to say, to start off, to say this project, which I think you all would admit to, is a very interesting piece of architecture. And unfortunately, it was placed out of the mainstream in Palm Springs. It's located in a location that a lot of people and tourists and people don't get to see it because it's out of the mainstream. When I was designing this structure, I had some personal objections to a normal piece of architecture there. I tried to, number one, hide the mechanical equipment because it's in the airport path coming into the Palm Springs airport, and I didn't, flying over the golf course and then then seeing this clubhouse, I didn't want a bunch of mechanical equipment to be viewed on the roof. So that was part of the consideration in the design. Now the sweeping roof, of course, a lot of people said I was copying the memorial in Hawaii, but that's not true. The main reason of the sweeping roof was I was trying to tie the architecture into golf. So that sweep is basically a golf swing, the club head swing coming through in that arc. And of course, the arc also helped with hiding the mechanical equipment. And of course, over the years, there's been some additions to it. And why I was never contacted, since I was the architect on the project, to look at these additions. And so there were things that were made, mainly that structure in front of the entrance, which hides the scope of the arch, the graceful arch. You don't see anymore. How that got there it was put there by somebody who had no feeling for architecture. And I don't know, they're, I guess, trying to emphasize the entrance, but everything sweeps to the entrance. So I don't know how you could designate the entrance more than the architecture itself. So anyway, now that it's being brought up to become a class 1 design, that rude piece of or structure has got to be removed. It's no question. I'm now 92 years old, and hopefully before I pass on, I can look at that piece of architecture where it was originally, the concept was made. So I ask this committee to, and I know your authority is limited because it's the final decision of the council, and unfortunately, the councils in the past, and I think even today, are not that educated towards architecture. And so they approve these, I call it graffiti that they put on some of our icon architecture. And hopefully it can be removed. And if there's any questions you have of me, I would be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Captor. I think many of us agree with you. So we're still in public hearing, and I would like to invite anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak in public comment on this item. Would someone else like to speak?
This is Stephen Keelan.
Okay.
On South Calle Marcus.
Okay.
I'm fully in support of this nomination. I'm thrilled that it's come to this. I echo what Hugh says, that terrible thing in the front needs to come down. And I think that the community can raise funds so that the city doesn't have to pay for it. But that should come down as soon as possible. It's terrible what that does to this beautiful piece of architecture. In the book that I wrote about Hugh, I say that he has the heart and the soul and the eye of a sculptor. And there's no better example of that than this piece of architecture. If this were tabletop size, I'd love to have it in the house. It's truly a work of art. The way the sweep and the ingenious way that he made the roof became another really important elevation to people flying into town and their first impression. He didn't want, air conditioners and other things. It's a beautiful piece of sculpture that sort of is a preview of what he would do with his more Southwestern inspired, but completely modern and original architecture that he would do later on.
And it's three-dimensional.
Three-dimensional. It's a sculpture. It's a living sculpture that, Hugh designed works of art, works of sculpture that people can live in and shop in or work in. And he's had such an important impact on this community. So thank you for considering this. I do hope that you will approve this, and I hope that the next step can be to remove that thing in the front. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keelan. Another speaker, Ernest, you had your name up.
I did.
Hand up, yes. Please state your name.
Ernest Lasenya. Hi, everybody. just wanted to say that I am associated with a number of nonprofits here in Palm Springs, but these comments are coming from me personally as a resident community member. I just want to say thank you very much for bringing this topic up. The historic report reads beautifully. I read every page of it. It's a history lesson, and I loved every bit of it. Great job. Just wanted to say, with my dealings with the community, I have heard this repeatedly coming up about preserving the clubhouse. I'm so happy to see that it's actually coming to be.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers for public comment? Any other speakers? Okay, last call for public comment. So seeing no further speakers on this item, I will close the public hearing. And now the action is with the board to further discuss and make comments. So we're going to have the board discuss. And I just want to begin by saying, first, Mr. Captor, we love your building. We love you. And of course, I think it's right in the center of Palm Springs. It has the best view of, you cited it so beautifully, you know, looking at that long perspective of the mountain. And I always thought the sweeping, I always thought that was flight. I thought that was an airplane taking off. So anyway, it's a wonderful building, and I do support you know, the designation, and would love to see that kind of super muscular structure removed as well. So I'd like to hear from other board members. Mr. Rosenau.
Yeah, thank you. I echo the same thoughts. I'm a proponent of this. I don't golf, and so when I went over to the site visit last week with city staff, it was my first time in the building. I had never even pulled into the parking lot, let alone get out. So it was really a great experience to walk around, see the architecture there, see the sculpture of what the building is. So I really am a proponent of this application. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other comments? Member Hanson.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Robert Chattel, who I noticed is in our audience today. His firm is the one that prepared the report, which I think was quite excellent, very detailed, as we've already mentioned. So I wanted to give a little shout out to them. And Mr. Captor, it's an honor to meet you virtually. I admire your work all around town. And it's interesting because when we started our discussion or the meeting today, we asked if there's any questions for staff, and it really wasn't a question for staff, but one of my main comments is the possibility of getting rid of, as Mr. Keelan said, the terrible thing on the front of the building. I don't know how we exactly put that into words, but I mean, I too, of course, am all for designating the building, but I'm hoping that we can add some type of, I don't know if it would actually be a condition or a recommendation, a very strong recommendation, that as part of the nomination, that the removal of the terrible thing on the front be part of the process. And I guess that would be a question for staff, you know, how far and how strong can we go on our recommendation that the removal is actually part of the designation of the building for city council to consider.
I might jump in here.
Comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. That's right.
I just was going to clarify to Member Hanson about the process for that. I think given that it's a historic designation application and there is no development, I think, and because it's, you know, essentially affiliated with the city operations, I think what we could do is take your recommendation, coordinate with our sister agencies and certainly go through the process that way with a strong recommendation and incorporate that into our presentation to the city council when they consider this. That this was, the recommendation both of the original architect as well as the board in their consideration to direct that city staff resolve that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board comments?
May I make a comment?
Absolutely.
What I would like to see is, if in this recommendation, that only the original parts of the building be part of it, and not because maybe some time in the future, it's just like the shelter structure on the other side where the restaurant, maybe that could have been done more artistically than just put there, like maybe canvas sloping structures, shade structures that would I think fit more with the original architecture than is just there. So so maybe if that's not part of this approval process, maybe some days that could be done more artistically.
Sarah, did you have your hand up?
I did. I just wanted to clarify in terms of our staff position and the staff memo. The points that everyone is bringing up related to what's contributing versus non-contributing, understanding that only the historic designation is revolving around the contributing factors of the original design intent. In fact, the entry feature is identified as a non-contributing factor to the designation. So that is actually made clear in the resolution and in the reports itself. So for any sort of future alterations, I think that is taken into consideration, understanding that those are not preserved. They will not be held to that merit. In fact, it probably would be encouraged for a different solution if that topic for redesign comes about. Because we're looking at an application for designation, we did want to make it very clear on what is actually historic versus not historic in terms of the additions. So I did want to point that out. And again, I think everyone has a very astute eye in terms of looking at the structure, and we have a lot of historic documentation helping us make those points. And we have the architect here also providing us with the insight of the design intent. So it's actually, this is a really incredible meeting to be a part of.
It's historical. So thank you for that clarification of that designation. Member Miller, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just briefly, I wanted to echo the comments of my fellow board members and regarding the wonderful sculptural quality of this building and the deserved designation that we're about to bestow upon it. And also to thank Hugh Capter for coming and joining us. It's wonderful to see you and to hear your vision for this building. And I'm hoping that in the coming months that we can work on removing that timber and canvas attachment on the front, and perhaps over time improve some of the other elements of the building to return it to its glory. But thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, just echoing what everyone has said already. And I would especially like to thank Mr. Chattel for the very informative report. Really made up for me not being able to make the site visit. So fantastic. I was pouring over it and extremely detailed, extremely helpful. So thank you for that. Also to Mr. Keelan and Mr. Capter for being here. Really changes the course of the discussion and really makes it more wonderful for everyone involved. So thank you again for that. I would like to posit that since we still have the architect with us, that maybe if he has a moment in his free time, he might be able to just consult with city staff and or the management of the structure, the golf course building, about how he might design a possible shade solution for that area, since obviously they thought they needed some shade there, and I'm sure he could come up with something brilliant, just so that that is on file. So when the time does come and that can be removed, that they would be able to install the architect's intent for providing shade there, since obviously the times have changed since 1967 and attendance has changed and building usage has evolved, so to speak. So that would be one of my suggestions there. Also, I noticed that a really fabulous wooden screen, which was like a partition or a divider, like a decorative screen on the north elevation, is no longer there. And surely Mr. Captor still has the drawings for that. And so it'd be wonderful if those were added to a file that was kept at the city, so that maybe that could be recreated someday using funds raised perhaps by the preservation community or the community at large. Because, you know, all of things are so important to the record and great to have on file as time goes on, as money become available and so forth. And money will become available because if the city council so chooses to designate this building, eventually it will qualify, hopefully, for the Mills Act and get some tax credits, and that money can be used to go back into further preservation and perhaps restoration. So on that note, I fully support the Class 1 historic nomination of this beautiful, beautiful building. And I must say that I always do tour for the last 40 years of living here. I detour onto Lawrence Crossley and to Golf Club Drive whenever I have to go to that part of the valley or Trader Joe, because I just love seeing that building and the beautiful vista behind it. So thank you for providing us with that beautiful visual all these years.
Mr. Lyon.
I just want to briefly pipe in and add my appreciation specifically directly to Hugh. Hugh, thank you for meeting me out there at the building many months ago when I slid this one onto the HSPB's work plan. And I cannot thank you all enough for supporting this. And Hugh, you are really to be recognized and commended as a master in our community. So again, thank you for helping me better understand this building.
Thank you, Ken. I'd like to make one more comment, and that is the thought of landscaping came up, and that building doesn't need any landscaping to hide it, because you know what happens, landscaping grows and it may look fine when it's installed, but in a few years, pretty soon the architecture is hidden. And so I would highly recommend no major landscaping be put around the structure other than a low grass or flowers, you know. Amen.
I agree. Mr. Lyon, before you talk, I want to thank you for sweeping in this wonderful architecture and having Mr. Captor here too. Okay, back to you, Mr. Lyon.
Just wanted to let Jade and the rest of the board know the city has the full set of a copy of the full set of drawings for this building. So your concerns about us having the records, we actually rarely do, and we have them for this building. So that also is a very, very lucky thing to have. Thank you.
And then also at the Palm Springs Art Museum, the drawings are there too. So
Scans, Ken, I think I gave you most everything, but I do have a good photo of that detail. I don't know if I shared that because it wasn't what we were talking about.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay. I would like to recommend or mention that when we do work for the city, the city requires that they get the master drawings. And of course, back then, these drawings were all hand done. It's not like they're all on computer. So the city, I don't have any of the drawings. I had to give them to this city.
And we have them, and if we need to get copies of those off to the museum for their archives, I think that can be accomplished. Again, thank you.
Very good. Any other comments or further discussion of board members? Any other? I just want to mention one thing. When I was standing in front of the building and looking at the siding and the sweep and the mountain behind it, you know, and I wondered why, you know, those 2x4 structures, you know, was in front of the wonderful curve, which, you know, totally eliminated the curve that we're speaking about today. And is it because it needed a place to put the sign, the name of the building? You know, I mean, not that I'm supporting it or want it, but it seems to be the structure that holds a sign. And so there must be a better solution for.
You designed a place for the sign, and the original photos show that.
Yeah.
Okay, so because to me, you know, it looks like they wanted the sign front and center. So, you know, and same in the back of the building that faces the west, there's a sweeping awning that has the name. So anyway, those are just other points to look at for the future. So any other discussion on this subject? Vice Chair Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have one other thing that I had highlighted in the report that I wanted to add, since we are privileged to have the architect here with us. Apparently, there was a raised memorial fountain that was part of the original construction, and that was a memorial to golf industry professional Milt Hicks. Now, it seems to me that's a rather important thing, and I always love fountains, and so many of the original fountains to so many of our buildings, including Bank of America and others around town, have been removed. So I just wanted to clarify that Mr. Kaplan designed that fountain, and do any of us know why maybe that fountain was removed?
Well, Milt Hicks at the time was a major contributor towards the golf course. And we had a case in the entrance way where we had one of his golf clubs, and there was a memorial to Milt Hicks. And there was also, of course, the fountain in the center, and that's been removed. And you know, it's funny how neophytes over the past can have such drastic major changes to some of our finest architecture.
Thank you.
That's for sure. Any other comments, any other discussion about this project? Okay, seeing no further discussion, may I please have a motion? A motion, please.
I'll make a motion.
Member Jansen, unmute, please. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. I'm going to just read the motion here that the HSPB adopt resolution number 149, a resolution of the board of the city of Palm Springs recommending that city council designate the Tockwitz Resort Golf Course Clubhouse at 1885 Lawrence Crossley Road as a Class 1 historic landmark, subject to conditions. And I would like to add 2 recommendations. Recommendation 1, that the, I think Scott Miller said it well, the timber and canvas structure on the main facade be removed to reveal the original facade. And recommendation number 2, that the city consider working with the architect, Hugh Captor, in any removals or any subsequent alterations to the building.
Good.
Janet,
So-
this is Sarah. I'm just going to interrupt for just a second. We do need to make sure that the recommendation and motion is based on the findings in this, if it's based on the findings in the staff report. So if you could also clarify that as part of your motion.
Do you need me to just say based on the findings or specifically? Okay,
Yeah, no, just.
and that we're making 2 recommendations based on the findings of the staff report?
Mhm.
2, okay. Is
Okay.
that sufficient?
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion is well stated and understood clearly. And we have a second, so motion made by Member Hanson, a second by Vice Chair Nelson. Is there any further discussion about the motion? Any other discussion? Wow. So seeing none, I will call for the question. All in favor of the motion as stated with the conditions, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed to the motion? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Well, congratulations. We have another wonderful designation to recommend to the City Council. And thank you so much for your participation in our meeting today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. So,
Did
Did you want to say one last thing?
Well, I just wanted to say, I can understand the city council's position, and you may be faced with it too. That was a request from the people who are leasing, which I think it's the Arnold Palmer, or that's their request. And I know the city council going to be leery of not wanting to upset the leasing of the golf course. So the council is going to, they're going to be in a spot here. So
mhm. Understand. But it is reversible one of these days. Yes. So, so moving on along our agenda, there's no unfinished business today or no new business. So let us proceed to agenda discussion item 5A, Preservation Matters Symposium, with a report from Vice Chair Nelson and Member Hanson. Please.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Subcommittee for Preservation Matters 2023 last met this morning at City Hall with city staff, and we're pleased to report things are moving right along. The program design has been completed and edits have been made. All of the presenters have turned in their presentation, and they are being polished with the producers as we speak. And the master presentation is being put together by a production team, Deborah Hobel and Jim Ritchie. Tom Dahl, the graphic designer, was kind enough to donate his time and effort to design the program this year. And we are now working on the last few weeks of goals before we launch this thing 25 days from now. So we're working on behind the scenes stuff with the convention center, the tour, the docent, marketing. In fact, an e-blast just went out today by the Palm Springs Historical Society. And in that time, 50 more seats have been filled for day 1 and quite a few more for day 2. So now we're just 5 seats away from being completely full on day 1, which is pretty remarkable for this far out. And we still have about 100 or so seats, I believe, for day 2. The tours at this point are all full, but we are hoping to release a few more opening for some of the tours. And the reception at this point has been completely filled. So we do apologize for anyone who's unable to get into those, but it's good news all around because this means that people have had an opportunity to register. And I'm pleased to say that marketing went out to various groups, both new and old. So I'm very confident that there will be new faces attending this year, and people from all different areas of the valley will be able to participate that may have not participated before. And I think that's really pretty much everything at this point in time. If Member Hanson has anything to add, please do so.
I do not. Excellent summary.
Great. Thank you for your help.
And you mentioned the beautiful brochure that will be handed out on the day of. And it's really, it documents the project, and it's a really great brochure for people to have something to take home with them. So I must say that you and your committee, subcommittee, has done a wonderful job, and I thank you so very much for your dedication and hard work, and just full-time attention to this annual symposium. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Any other comments about the Preservation Matters Symposium?
Just one more.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. But I must also extend a big thanks to you and Dick Burkett for being involved as well, because it has made all the difference.
Good. Thank you. So moving on, that completes today's agenda items. And now it's time for general comments from the board. Do we have any board member general comments? Any today?
Oh,
Vice Chair Nelson?
of course, right?
Of course.
So I did have a comment, and I think it's really critical. A few weeks ago, as I was driving down Tuckwood Canyon Way, I couldn't help but notice that a Donald Wexler building called Tuckwood Professional Plaza at 2145 through 2225 East Tuckwood Canyon Way was having some alterations done to the outside of the building. Some original tile was being removed and some paint was being applied. And I reached out to Gary Wexler about the building, and he was quite busy at the time, but I just wanted to make him aware of it. And so then we forgot about it. And then today I drove by, haven't been able to go by any sooner because of being out of town and displaced and other issues. But it's been painted, so it's no longer this historic color, and all those original tiles from 1973 are gone. Now, this is important because there's a building that had retained its historic integrity for 50 years on a very visible right-of-way. It's a Class 4 site, and 1973, 2023 is 50 years old. So it bothers me greatly that somehow this was not flagged. I don't know if it went through staff level review, but it should have. Now it's altered, and it no longer has those distinguishing character defining features of that beautiful tile, original tile. So this is something that I think is extremely important as building from the late 60s and the 70s, and even pretty soon, the very early 80s, begin to become altered, because we do have some significant buildings from that period by various architects some of whom are still alive, like Hugh Capter and Robert Rusciati. So I would like just staff to be aware of this and maybe reply if there's some way that, you know, deep voting can be flagged when someone comes to the counter at the planning department. Oh, that's what Don works for. Oh, it's 50 years old. Oh, it's a class 4. So that's all I have to say about it at the moment.
Thank you. Any
And then-
other? Hmm?
I was just going to say, in some instances, Member Nelson, you know, that would go through a plan. They may not have come to the planning counter, you know, just to be blunt about it, you know, and if they don't need a planning entitlement, they may just be dealing with the Department of Buildings. Often, however, that will go through a plan check process. And we do try to catch that and route those items that may have potential historic significance or suspected historic significance to Sarah, so that she can sort of identify those issues. But we will certainly make sure that we are coordinating internally to try and catch those wherever we can.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next, staff comments. Are there any comments from staff?
I just had a few updates that I would like to go ahead and make at this time. Just wanted to let the board know that the CLG report was submitted at the end of March. So I did want to thank everyone for providing necessary information for that report. And the next thing I wanted to note is you will be seeing an email coming from me very shortly related to the HSPB award nominees. Please review the contents of that report or of that email. There should be 3 attachments. Take a look at the criteria that was created to evaluate the nominees and send me the response back via email. I'll put a date and time on there that I would need that by, but we do need that at a pretty quick turnaround rate so that we can get all of the pieces moving along, so we can make sure that that information is published in the right places or in the upcoming pamphlets and such. And so if you can take some time to look through that when it comes through, I will be sending it after our meeting today. If you have any questions related to any of that, please feel free to shoot me an email or call me on my work cell or on my work number, whatever you need, if you have any questions. But I just wanted to let you know it's coming. And it is a little bit of an urgent reply that I'm requesting everyone to do there. And, you know, I think that's it. That's it for me. No more other comments.
Thank you. Nelson?
Yeah, thank you. I did have one other question for staff, and that would be some request if maybe for the next board meeting, we could have an update on timeline for Town and Country Center. Walking around it recently, I couldn't help but notice that the north side and also the Indian Canyon side appear to continue to be neglected, even though work is being done on the Palm Canyon facade, which is very encouraging. But with the opening now of the spa at the new cultural center and the eventual opening later this year of the entire cultural center site owned by the tribe across the street, I feel that it's imperative that the HSPB know and be aware of grid development timeline for improving the rest of the Town and Country Center site, since it is now an official Class 1 historic site. And I believe that they were given some kind of direction to timeline. So if we could get a report on that next month, that would be much appreciated.
Sure, I can give you kind of what we have up to date.
Great, thank you.
Any, yes,
Just
Member
was wondering
Hanson?
if Sarah could remind me, maybe you guys, is our next meeting still virtual? Or yeah.
Sure, maybe I'll handle this to spare Sarah the confusion of this ongoing emergence from the pandemic. So we are in a state of the city council renewing findings every 30 days, that there is still a public health reason to encourage, I want to say social distancing, physical distancing is now the term under California state law. And so the city council is making those findings, which allows individual boards and commissions to determine how they want to hold their meetings for the rest of this calendar year. So under state law that expires at the end of the year, you have the discretion to determine if you want to meet in person or remotely, as long as the city council has made the finding. They are continuing to make that finding. So for the May meeting, which is May 2nd, I think we can continue to do this remotely. And I think should anything change, should the council sort of, decline to make those findings at an upcoming meeting, we would then reach out, regroup, and have to come back in person. But for now, unless you all wish to change it, it's sort of business as usual by remaining remote.
Thank you for that clarification. Vice Chair Nelson?
Yeah, just one more question regarding scheduling of our meeting. I would just like to confirm now, if possible, for planning of summer vacations and so forth, that HSPB will indeed be dark the month of August.
Yes, that is correct. We have a July 5th meeting, which I think is a little tricky given the holiday that week. So I think we can discuss how we want to handle that, maybe at our May 2nd meeting. And then the next meeting following that would be September 5th, which is after Labor Day.
Thank you for that. And I would concur about July, as I do have travel planned the week of the holiday. So I don't know if anyone else was in favor, but perhaps that meeting could be moved because of the holiday week to the following week.
Is that something we can look into and discuss at our May meeting?
I am just trying to bring up a calendar, but I think that would move it to July 11th, and I'm not seeing any conflicts on our calendar today. But I think Sarah can look into that and just confirm there are no other conflicts and bring that back May 2nd.
So July 11. I already made my vacation plans for that week. Anyway, we'll discuss it next month. And are there any further discussion or questions or reports or anything? Okay, so the meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board is adjourned to the meeting of Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. And I want to thank everybody for their participation today and look forward to your participation at our annual symposium later this month. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.